Herald News, your news now.
The Herald News.
Empowering the community.
Basin Views.
Herald News, your news now. Klamath Falls, Oregon.
The Herald News.
Podcast. Empowering the community and serving the Klamath Basin. This is the Herald News Basin Views podcast. Greetings and welcome to Basin Views, a Herald News podcast featuring interviews with local experts discussing issues important to the Klamath Basin. I'm Kurt Liedtke with the Herald News. This week we are joined by Ramona Quinn, Environmental Health Program Administrator for Klamath County Public Health, here to discuss air quality, which is a grave concern every year in the Klamath Basin, and especially this year with all of the fires that we have going on in the smoke. Ramona, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Well, thank you for having me, Kurt.
Now, I always like to start these things off with a little bit of background on our guests before we get into your area of expertise. So can you fill us in a little bit on who Ramona Quinn is?
Well, I moved to the Basin about 40 years ago, and I've worked in the environmental health field pretty much all of my life.
And you are involved with Klamath County Public Health. Can you tell me a little bit about that department specifically, what its involvement is and what its areas of authority are?
Well, in public health, we not only do air quality, which is what I'm here for today, but we also have environmental health, which works with inspecting restaurants and other swimming pools and things like that. We have the WIC program out of the Klamath County Health Department. We have clinical services, and we have a tobacco prevention program.
And how did you get involved with Klamath County Public Health and end up in your current role?
Well, I've been in environmental health since I got out of college. Coming to Klamath Falls, my reason for coming to Klamath Falls was because I got my first job here in environmental health.
And so just moved up the ladder over the course of the years involved, right?
Took a few years off to raise kids and came back and have been moving my way up the ladder since, yes.
Well, let's talk air quality, because I think it's an issue this whole summer that is on a lot of people's minds right now. You don't have to be a health expert to look out the window and realize that air's not exactly clean right now. We've got some problems with smoke going on. Why does the Klamath Basin consistently, year after year, have a problem with air quality? Is it a matter of geographics? Is it environment? Is it the jet stream? What's going on that causes smoke to be sent our way?
It's the geography of the area. We live in the Klamath Basin. The basin pools the air and keeps it centralized. We get a lot of drainage at night from smoke because of the way smoke is. We get it blowing from wherever the smoke is. We're just lucky that we're right in the middle, so everything comes in. As the smoke blows in, it just stays here for a while, and unless the winds are really high, it doesn't blow out very well.
So there's a lot of smoke in the air, but at what point is air pollution and smoke from wildfires considered unhealthy?
We have the monitor that we use all year for air quality down at Peterson School. During the season now, we're looking at air quality as being unhealthy. For some people, anytime it reaches 100 micrograms per cubic meter or above, it's unhealthy for sensitive groups then. When it gets up to 150 to 200 parts per million, that's when it's unhealthy for everybody. But here recently, we have been between 200 and 300 parts per million, which is very unhealthy.
You say unhealthy, but Americans tend to have a lot of unhealthy habits from time to time. Just how much of a concern is this compared to eating an entire pizza would be unhealthy? But hey, I've been known to do that from time to time. Air quality's impact on public health, whether it's adverse health effects for the healthy and especially for the susceptible people who have asthma and other conditions. Why is this such a concern when it is unhealthy?
When we have unhealthy air, we have to breathe. So the air particles are coming deeper and deeper into your lungs. And when the particles get deep into your lungs, you can have a lot more problems, not only respiratory problems, but it also impacts heart disease and things like that.
So how is air quality measured?
Air quality is measured in micrograms per cubic meter as it passes through a small point. The air is passed through, and there's particulate counters and a filter that actually filters everything out, and then it's processed and counted. the more particles in the air, the higher the air quality index and the worse it is for you.
So public health's role in measuring that, how often are measurements made and how often is it reported and how do people find out about what the current levels are?
Public health currently doesn't monitor. We have monitors that belong to the DEQ, the Oregon DEQ, and they are a continuous monitor. They're monitored 24/7, and you can access them by Googling DEQ AQI. And when you do that, you will come up with a map of Oregon, and there'll be little dots on the map, and it'll give you a color. Hopefully the color's green. This morning the color was purple. So the green meaning it's good air quality, yellow meaning moderate, which is still okay. And then we get into orange, which is unhealthy for sensitive groups. We have red, which is pretty much unhealthy for everybody. We have purple, which is very unhealthy for everyone. And then we have a maroon color that's hazardous for everyone. And those are all dependent on the levels of particulate in the air.
Public health sends out reports every day or every morning, correct? On that, or how can people, they can Google, but are there other means in which people can find out what the current air quality levels are?
We send out advisories all winter from October through March, but we also do send out advisories during the summer when we have problems. You can get our advisories on Facebook. We have an air quality Facebook page. We also have a public health Facebook page that the advisories can be found on. We also send the advisories to a lot of the local media who report them for us.
Summer is usually a time when people are supposed to be getting outside, but summer on the West Coast has become more so a matter of dealing with catastrophic wildfires. It seems like one after another, and every summer it seems to be getting worse. Those wildfires produce a lot of smoke. That smoke is getting blown our way. Right now we have fires in Jackson County and Siskiyou County that are causing a lot of our issues locally. How can people individually work to maybe minimize the impact of that smoke and air pollution on their lives? Are there things that they can do maybe in the home or at work?
Well, there's a lot of things that they can do to reduce their own risk. They can, if it's smoky outside, they can go indoors. When they're indoors, if they have an air conditioner, they can turn it on to recirculate so it's not bringing in outdoor air, so it's just recirculating clean air. One major thing that they can do is change their air filters. Once they're recirculating the air from their system, by changing the air filters, it will clean it to some degree. They can also get room air cleaners and change the filters or clean the filters on those often. They can also, we get a lot of homes that have draft spaces around the windows and around the doors. In the wintertime, people put up the draft snakes or some way to reduce the air coming in so they don't get cold. They can do that as well in the winter or in the summer so that the smoky air is not infiltrating their home.
Certain activities that maybe people should avoid. In the mornings, I keep seeing joggers outside with how bad the smoke is right now. I think, wow, that person's brave.
Well, it's their lungs. And if they want to run, we try to give out a air quality guideline to where if they can see 3 to 5 miles, then it's probably unhealthy for sensitive groups. If they can look outside and pick a spot that's 5 miles away and they can see it clearly, then it's probably an okay thing to go outside and run, to exercise and do things like that. If they can only see 3 to 5 miles, then it's probably in the unhealthy category for sensitive groups. If you can see 1 to 3 miles, which is about what it's, been recently, 1 to 3 miles is probably unhealthy for everyone, and they may want to consider not going out. If you can see 1 mile or less, I really recommend you stay indoors.
A lot of the smoke that we have and the fires that we're experiencing are not in Klamath County. It's getting blown our way, but it's in other areas. Since your department works so diligently to study public health and study air quality and inform the public. Any kind of internal frustrations that come up from time to time, like it's not our fires, but it's becoming our smoke.
There's a lot of frustration when there's nothing we can do to force the air out. We would love to be able to put up big fans and blow it back down to California or blow it back to Medford, but that's not going to work. You know, we can just hope that the meteorological conditions change and blow the air in a different direction and away from the fires.
It seems to be getting commonplace where we're having all of these wildfires summer after summer. And unfortunately, is it the jet stream that causes that smoke to come our way? Or what? Why does the smoke come from outside areas and come towards us?
It's just our prevailing wind patterns. They usually are, generally it blows from the west to the east. And that's what we're getting now.
Summer outlooks. I know you're not a meteorologist, but you keep a close eye on the weather. How are things looking long term for this summer in terms of smoke effects and air pollution?
As long as we're getting the same kind of weather, we'll be getting the same kind of smoke as long as there's fires. So if we can eliminate the fires, eliminate those, but with, you know, it's always good to have a thunderstorm come through because it clears the air. But then when it clears the air after the rain, it probably started a few fires. So we can't catch a break out here.
No win situation in those instances. Well, that's summer, but I know public health also stays very active in wintertime too. We have an air quality season here that takes place in winter. Could you explain what that is, how that got started, and when exactly it goes into effect?
We have an air quality season here in the Basin from October 15th until March 15th of every year. This came about because back in the mid-80s, we had the highest pollution rate of anywhere in the U.S. We were measuring PM10 levels, which is larger than a PM 2.5 that we measure now. And they were the highest in the nation. Our reading for one day was 700 and I'm thinking it was like 787, something like that. So it was a very, very high amount, all from wood stoves. What had happened the week before was we had very cold weather and we had an inversion like we get here in the Basin. And it was cold outside. It was in the minus numbers for more than a week. And people were cold and they burnt their wood stoves. And because we didn't get a lot of afternoon heating, we did not get the smoke to blow out of the basin. So it just concentrated and concentrated. And then the EPA saw that how high we were in our numbers, and they put us in non-compliance with federal standards. And we've been in and out of non-compliance with federal standards since then.
So where do those federal standards lie, and what has been done to try to address it?
The federal standards currently we're working on, we meet PM10 standards now, and we have been meeting the PM 2.5 standards for the last 5 heating seasons. But we're still considered out of compliance with the EPA. To get back into compliance, we have to maintain our current levels that are good. A lot of what our levels are is we've had some pretty mild winters. We've had mild winters and we've had a lot of stormy, rainy conditions. We haven't had the deep, deep cold with the deep inversions that we had, I think, back in 2012, I think. So if we can stay out of that cycle, we'll be fine. But we have to have people be cognizant that every time they put a piece of firewood in their wood stove, that they're creating pollution. And that pollution can very easily get into their lungs or somebody else's lungs. And so to be cognizant that if the wind's not blowing, maybe it's not a good idea to be burning your wood stove.
So what can people do as possible alternatives or things that they can do to maybe treat the wood to maybe minimize the amount of smoke that's created?
The most smoke that's created out of wood that you put into your wood stove is from not drying your wood properly. If you have wood that has a high moisture content because you just went out and chopped it down 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, it's not going to be very dry. That's going to create a lot of smoke. If you have wood that is very dry, is 2 years old instead of 2 months old, it's going to burn hot and quick. And that's what we need people to do, is burn small hot fires instead of stuffing their wood stove full of wet wood.
I know there was a program for a while that was working with citizens to swap out stoves that happened in Lake County and Klamath County. Can you talk a little bit about some of the efforts that have been made for alternatives? I know there was a program for, wood pellets as an alternative, and trying to help people weatherize their homes to maybe minimize the smoke?
Since 1987, we've had quite a few different programs in the basin for swapping out wood stoves for other sources. It first started out swapping out an old wood stove for a certified wood stoves. Now the last program that we had, every program comes with different funding streams. We in Klamath County don't have any current funding streams to allow that to happen. Usually we get them from the DEQ or from the EPA. We apply for grants whenever we can to try and get excess money into the basin so that we can change out the really bad stoves. This last set of money we had that we shared with Lake County ended up changing out, I think it was nearly 100 wood stoves in Klamath Basin. And along with that, they also did some weatherization on the houses so that if you had leaky windows or there was no insulation, they would do some fixes on those, besides changing out the wood stoves for less polluting sources. Less polluting sources than a wood stove can be a pellet stove. Pellet stoves still emit smoke, but they emit a lot less smoke than the wood stoves do. And a lot of the change-outs were for natural gas as well.
So it sounds like it's kind of a community effort when winter comes around. Everyone's responsibility to do what they can to minimize smoke output. What does public health do during the air quality season? I've talked to a couple of people there who say they're actually driving around looking at chimneys. So.
Absolutely, we do that. First thing in the morning, we put out an air quality advisory. We look at different weather reports, not just one. We look at several weather reports. We look at the air quality index that we have at that time. We look at to see what's going to happen. Are we predicted to have 3-mile-an-hour winds? Or are we predicted to have 8-mile-an-hour winds? We combine all that stuff and we'll put out our advisory for the day. We'll say it's a green day, everybody can burn their wood stove. We'll say it's a yellow day, only people with certified wood stove should burn. Or it's a red day, please don't burn. There are people that we allow to burn, people who have exemptions to burn on red days. But then there's days that we call red health alert days, and that's when it gets smoky out there. We ask everybody not to burn. We will go out and we will monitor those days, and we'll drive all over the basin looking at chimneys at different times of the day. Some of us get out there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and others are out there at 9 o'clock at night, just driving around looking for people to see if they are burning on a red day. And then we will send them a notice telling them not to do it. Usually what happens is people don't know of the ordinance, they're new to town, and a lot of our work is education. We have to maintain our air quality, otherwise we will get fined from the EPA.
And that's what I was going to get into. What happens if we are consistently not compliant? What are the repercussions that occur?
We have been in non-attainment for quite a while, but the last few years we're still in non-attainment, but we have met the EPA's challenge. So we still have to have more time and more effort to bring our numbers down even lower than they have been, and to have less days that are out of compliance. If not, the EPA could send repercussions our way. The last time we avoided serious non-attainment, and that's what we're doing right now. Serious non-attainment, had that been applied to us, all of the local industry would have had to put on maximum controls over their emissions, even though the wood burners are the ones who were probably making the biggest cause of the emissions. That's EPA's way of getting communities to get into compliance when you take away when you add things to their major source contributors.
And it has serious economic implications. There was a community in Oregon, I recall a couple of years ago, maybe it was Oak Ridge or Cottage Grove, some area around there, that was declared in serious non-attainment, and it had severe economic impact locally on their industries. So this is something that's not just it's not a big deal if I burn a fire or not. Well, it could potentially cost jobs. It could potentially cost industries locally if we continue to be in serious non-attainment, right?
Absolutely. And we are currently not in serious non-attainment, but we are still in non-attainment. But we are working our way towards achieving attainment.
Does the EPA ever take exceptions to that? Because there are times we're seeing fire seasons last longer and longer. And I think we've had a couple late season wildfires that have occurred actually during air quality season that could potentially create smoke, where it's not our fault. It's not us burning wood locally, but because of the geography, like you talked about, smoke may be blown our way if there is a very late season fire.
Well, it's not just late season fires. It's other forms of smoke that are put into the basin that can cause us to exceed standards. When it is a non-human, let's say when it's a wildfire, the EPA gives us a go-ahead. So the days that we're experiencing now that are way out of line, way unhealthy, if we apply for it, they will give us a pass on these days. But there's other days when they won't. If it's usually something that a human could do and a human can cause the fire, then they're probably not going to give us a pass on it. But wildfire is one of those things that they do. If we had a shed that was a hay shed that burned one year, and the hay inside burnt for days, and they did not give us a pass on that because they felt that it was, even though it may not have been human caused, it was something that humans took care of, and they did not give us a pass. So we did end up with a hit on our record for that, where that didn't make or break us that year, because we had a couple other instances that were bad as well, but just one incident. So if people are outdoor burning their leaves in the fall, even though it is during air quality season, and that brings our numbers up, we can get hit. Even though it's not wildfire smoke and it's not wood stove smoke, it's people outdoor burning, that can impact our attainment.
So what would public health like the average citizen to do here during the summer when we've got a lot of smoke in the air, and during the winter air quality season? What would you like to see people do?
Be sensitive of their own ability to withstand the smoke, and just limit their activity, especially now in the summer. Keep themselves well hydrated. See how far you can go. If you're very healthy and you're used to running and you have no asthma, you have no other conditions, that would allow the smoke to hurt you, then it's fine to go out and do something when you can see 5 to 15 miles an hour. If you only see 3 to 5, you may want to consider not going outside. If it is 3 to 5, you probably should stay inside. And if you can't see across the street, please stay in the house and breathe filtered air if possible. If you have to go out, make your trip short. Try to go to places that have good, clean air.
And it's also not just about the individual, it's thinking about your neighbors too, right? During the winter, people may burn and they think, well, I'm perfectly healthy, but maybe your neighbor has emphysema, or maybe they have a kid with asthma, or maybe there's a senior living down on the street that has severe breathing problems. So it's not just an individual thing, it's a community-wide effort, right?
Well, just think about it as if you can see the air, you're breathing what you're seeing. Normally we don't see the air, and that's a good thing. So if you're polluting the air, whether it be you live next to a school, we've had people doing outdoor burning where they're right behind the school's intake for their whole recirculation system, and the school had to close because the people were unwilling to put out their fires because they can burn their rubbish. Well, maybe Saturday or Sunday would have been better for them. So we have rules in the basin that a lot of other places don't have, just because of our geography here in the basin. We have 2 times a year that we allow burning, outdoor burning in the basin. We call them the spring open burn and the fall open burn. They're usually predicated on when there's wildfires. We try and avoid when wildfires are still going, and we also try to avoid during our air quality season if we can. Now, the fall open burn, we usually cannot get in before our air quality season, so we only allow burning on specific days. We have it open usually for a 2-week period, but then you still have to call to make sure it's a burn day or check one of the resources that we have available that says it's a green day for burning, because we do get a lot of smoke and a lot of people want to burn their tree limbs. They want to burn their outdoor debris. It's always illegal in the basin to burn your garbage. I did see someone burning their trash this summer. It was 85 degrees outside and there's smoke coming out of the fireplace, and then when you stop and you smell the smoke, it's not wood. It was garbage. We have a lot of people who don't think about what all the plastic, what their trash is doing, not only to their neighbors, but also to them, because usually fireplaces and wood stoves, they're not sealed completely. So whatever you're putting on the outside, you're also getting into your home. So your indoor air quality is not as good as it should be when you're burning things like that in your fireplace.
Ramona Quinn is the Environmental Health Program Administrator for Klamath County Public Health. Thank you so much for taking some time to educate us about air quality and the current summer season and air quality season. Hopefully in the immediate we get some nice rain or at least get some of the fires that are burning suppressed so that we can get a little bit of relief from the smoke.
Thank you, Kurt.